As promised, I'm bringing you my video on healing and divine intervention. I took a couple days to kind of study up through the scriptures what exactly um, are God's views on healing and when He intervenes and when He doesn't. Starting off with healing, what I have found is that it is not God's will for everyone to be healed. And kind of I might have a little bit of a biased opinion on that because of my own life. Some of you more observant viewers have probably noticed a little bit of problem with me and my fine motor skills in my hands. That's because I'm a mild form of cerebral palsy, which limits my ability to walk and general fine motor function. But I have a very mild case, so I'm pretty lucky. Um, Obviously, I have not been healed, and I've gone to faith healers, had many people pray for me, and it just hasn't happened. I feel I've gotten stronger over the years, which is great, and I'm very thankful for. But full healing, as far as me walking and all that stuff, it hasn't happened. Um, and then I look even into the Older Testament, when there was healing. I mean, obviously the prophets healed people of different diseases, leprosy and things such as that. But then I believe in either the Chronicles or Kings in the Old Testament. There was actually a king of Israel, or a son of a king. I don't know if he ever made it to king, who his nursemaid fell on him and messed up his feet, so he was crippled for life. He was never healed. If you go out throughout the Gospels, Jesus healed many people for different reasons. Sometimes it was to bring up the faith in people, and sometimes it was because he had compassion on them, or because of their faith. The reason for this, I say, um, it isn't always God's will for those to be healed, can be found in John chapter 9, verses 1 through 3. Um, that was kind of background. In Jewish culture, if you are, if you have any sort of handicap, debilitation, even being left-handed, it's seen as being cursed by God in this ancient Jewish culture, I should say. Um, for either your own sins or your parents' sins. So, into John chapter 9, Jesus and the disciples are walking through a town. They see a man who was born blind. And they say, Rabbi, is this man born blind because of his parents' sins or his own? And Jesus answered, Neither. He is made this way so my light may shine through him. Um, Now, my interpretation of that, which I feel I've received through the Holy Spirit, so obviously that's, for some people, that's kind of an irrelevant um, thing, is he's saying is that sometimes God will use your disability or your sickness to bring people to understand Him more. And I've seen that in my own life. There's some people that are just, you know, have found a lot of inspiration through the way I live my life, and they see God in it. Um, and there's some people that have literally have told me that they've come to know God through knowing me. So um, I would say that my theory is pretty valid, but um, the reason for that is because if you look at it, I was a, I used to be a drug addict. Now, by looking at me, you wouldn't know that, but obviously, if you were to watch me live my life, you can see that I physically struggle with everyday life. And the fact that I live for God means something to some people. And for some people, it makes them look harder at who God is. And they come to know and understand God a little more, which I find to be a great blessing. And yeah, there are some days where I just want to be normal, where I don't feel like getting out of bed and it's hard. Um, and so I feel that God is using my disability for the greater good. And at least for this time and right now, um, more good can be done by me living in this chair than by me walking out of it. And I just try to hold on to the fact that maybe one day on earth, God will grant me healing. And if not, I know that when I go to heaven, I'm going to have a glorified body and I'll be walking around and doing everything I've always wanted to do. And that's what I hold on to. So that's my personal thoughts on specifically healing. Now, as far as divine intervention in all events, it's not so clear. In the Old Testament, um, a lot of it was based upon what was the greater good for Israel. Sometimes God intervened with Israel um, because of their faith, or sometimes He didn't intervene because of their lack of faith. Um, Also, sometimes He would intervene because of their holiness, and sometimes He would, well, I guess I should say righteousness, but that's for another topic. Or sometimes he would not intervene because of sin among the nation of Israel. Going into the New Testament, it's more along the lines of, since all of humanity was granted the ability to be redeemed, it was more along what is the greater good for all of mankind, which is a little harder to see. And it kind of reminds me of this analogy that I saw in one of Together for Pieces videos about him and his dogs, and how he saw what was greater for him and his family and people overall with him and his dogs on this couch. I feel the same thing is with God. He looks at what is the greater good for all of humanity. Because if you look, even people that live for God, such as Paul, all the disciples, they all, they met pretty grim deaths, except for John, who was exiled to a small island in Patmos by himself. So I wouldn't say that he exactly missed out on the misfortune boat. Um, and so I kind of look at that, is that if, let's go back to once again philosophically saying that if there is a God, one God who is he has to be all-knowing and all-powerful. And so with that would come great responsibility, and with great responsibility comes wisdom. Wisdom to be able to see what is the greater good for all of the world. And if I intervene here, that might mean that I couldn't intervene over there. Because God would have to have a larger perspective of the whole world together. And so really we can't understand God's will all the time, because he has to look at the greater good of all humanity. Now, also, another thing that I find interesting about God is that He's bound by His own promises. He binds Himself by His word. So things such as faith can really play in a factor. And I see that faith actually plays more of a factor than doubt, such as the faith is a mustard seed parable. So obviously, I would say if you really want God to intervene, you pray and have faith, and you have better chances. But I know this is a bit of a cop-out, but I frankly don't have an answer of why God intervenes in some areas and doesn't in others. I think it's just I lack wisdom. I don't know everything. So I challenge you to kind of look at wisdom. What I find is pretty interesting is Job chapter 28 about what God thinks of wisdom and where wisdom is found. Wisdom and understanding. So if you guys want to look at that, go ahead. But that's pretty much all I have to say. Thanks for tuning in. I appreciate my 5 subscribers and my 113 views. I think like maybe 4 comments. So I really appreciate that. I don't know when my next video will be. I'm kind of waiting on a topic. Feel free to throw a topic at me. Also, feel free to respond at any time. Even if it's negative, I'll definitely give it a listen and possibly respond. So everyone, have a great day. Live on, live strong. Thank you very much.